I am Gloria Waslyn, and these are the Parrots for Peace. Let me introduce you. This is Mr. Baby. This is his mate, beautiful girl, Miss Merlin. And this is their 3-year-old son, little boy Peacenik. And the three of them are blue and gold macaws. They are a family, a nuclear family, advocating for alternative energy, however. And they are peace activists. So they are avian activists, avian being the word for birds. And they are very involved with many, many environmental and peace and sustainability activities. So we're looking forward to meeting everybody tonight and telling you a little bit about what the birds do, and having a hope that you are inspired to become activists yourself, especially in this very important time. This is the year 2012, and it's prophesized to be a major game changer. They have predictions from many, many different cultures that this is a time where people will make a decision about the fate of the planet, and we are dealing with that with things like fracking and Indian Point and other nuclear facilities. We've got Fukushima, we've had Chernobyl, we've had lots of other episodes of 3 Mile Island, and we're making big decisions on how we will solve the energy crisis that's been manufactured so that we can move into a sustainable economy and have a carbon neutral footprint, so that we are off fossil fuels and into something that would be like 0-point energy, using ambient energy. And the birds are absolutely advocating for a natural solution, whether it's things like solar and wind power right now, or water power, and then moving to sustainable energy, because that will be a very big source of shift for the world. It'll give people the free energy that they need, and it'll give good resources for everybody. So that should be an end to some of the crises that we're seeing with water shortages, food shortages around the world, and lots of problems that can be solved with more efficient and better energy use. So that is what the birds are advocating for.
Well, that's great, Gloria. That sounds like a really good mission for you. What are some of the recent events the birds have been to?
They've been very active, David, in the New York State involvement in the fracking decision, hydrofracturing. Mm-hmm. So they've been campaigning for people to write letters to the DEC, and Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York State. We've been down at Woodstock's Village Green quite frequently, asking people to write letters because our voices are very important. They've contributed some donations to Casco Mountain Keeper in exchange for taking pictures of people, mm-hmm. and that's been fun. We've contributed to different causes. Recently in this area there have been some tropical storms, Irene and Lee, that have created flooding challenges for some of the townships, and we've contributed to Phoenicia's Rotary Club, mm-hmm. and we've contributed also to Prattsville, and we've done lots of good events locally to cheer people up. We've got on Merlin's 14th birthday, December 10th, we went down to the holiday party at Prattsville to mm-hmm. entertain lots of children at the holiday party. Ooh, fancy feather, that's magical.
Were you down in New York City this summer?
We have been down in New York City quite a bit. We've done the Occupy movement, and mm-hmm. I call the Occupy movement OM. O-M.
That's great.
OM, power to the people and power to the parrots. Mm-hmm. They are kind of soft advisors and coaches, well, speaking through me, mm-hmm. of a fellow named Ray Lewis. And Ray and his wife, Marsh, have been very involved in the Catskill area for about 8 years, and have been anti-fracking advocates. And he's a retired Philadelphia police captain. And when he heard that the Zuccotti Park had been raided by Bloomberg's police force early in the evening, and there was unusual force and perhaps the destruction of property and a type of unwarranted, almost, guerrilla action by the police at 1 a.m., he stood up for the First Amendment rights of people's freedom of expression. They were passive resistors. And we met him and we took some pictures, and we're hoping that he is going to go on a campaign throughout the country to visit and give good cheer to all of the Occupy places. So he's been invited now to Philadelphia, his hometown, and I think he's really wearing his uniform, his retired police uniform, to great advantage, because he's demonstrating what police are really supposed to be about, which is protecting the Constitution of the United States and people's right for assembly, people's right for free speech, and to protect the citizenry. So we're big advocates of all the people in Occupy. We are all part of the 99%, and as the birds say, we're part of 100%, because they're advocating that everybody finds a way to have a sustainable win-win situation, that there is a way for all of the economic systems to collaborate, so that there is a way for people to benefit and get their fair profits, and be encouraged to invest in hopefully green economies. There are principles that have been developed by some of the sovereign wealth entities at the last big conference called the Santiago Principles. And it's really about almost like the Kyoto Principles for climate improvement, so that there's not a harmful impact, whether it's by manufacturing or by economic exploitation. So that there are many sovereign entities, especially in the Scandinavian countries, that make it a national policy not to invest in any munitions, in any fossil fuel issues that would contribute to either global warming or to war. So we're hoping that the birds are good spokes avians to get messages out, not only to the Occupy people, but the people who the Occupy movement is really trying to address, which are the institutions, whether the banking institutions, the political institutions, who are intending to be benign. They're intending to make the best profits possible, to keep the system as we have known it, growing and prospering. But sometimes there's such a large amount of growth that the systems need to be recontemplated and repurposed so that it's for the people, for the good of all the stakeholders.
And I saw a good photograph today online that said, somebody holding up a placard, very crudely drawn, but it said, "We will protect you until you wake up."
Right, right. And this, I think this 2012 is really about, things have become so imbalanced that it is time for individuals to recognize that whether they call it source divinity is within each of us, or some people use the word God, some people say we all have the same energy, and that's really what the birds are speaking about. It's not just human-centric. They're talking about all of us are from the same source creator. So often people have misinterpreted some of the books that have been handed down through millennium by all of the major religions, or the world religions that are the predominant religions, that have been misrepresented. We are supposed to be stewards as human beings of nature, and not to exploit nature. Nature is not under human beings as at the apex, But we are all in a collective environment, Mother Earth, and we are in an interconnected web of life, so that an imbalance creates a big distortion for all of life kind.
Mm-hmm.
So they're talking about sentient life as needing protection. And that's one of the messages that they've even brought to the Occupy movement, which is that nature needs to have her voice, and hopefully that voice is echoed by these birds as well as everybody. So the message that Baby Merlin and Peacenik are bringing to the table, whether it's at the United Nations when they've spoken at the Interfaith Chapel for events like the Human Rights Commemoration,
Mm-hmm.
where they're saying it's wonderful that all humans should have the same inalienable rights that we consider as part of our constitutional rights, but that should be extended not just to animals, but also to nature herself, so that there's not the wholesale destruction of big portions of the rainforest for whether it's burning or repurposing rainforest for factories and different things, because the ecosystem is very, very important to keep in a balance. And so that's what the birds have been doing, is talking about the sustainability and the sentient life rights that all of nature deserves.
I've noticed that Bolivia, I believe it is according to Facebook and some of the sources coming through Facebook, through Occupy the Arts, which is one of my
Yes.
pages run by a young lady from town.
Yes.
Evidently Bolivia is attempting to legally confer Mother Nature as having the equivalent rights as any other human being.
Well, if
so that
corporations have rights.
Yeah, well, that's a big issue also. Monsanto, who is the large organization, the company that genetically alters various crops, they are under lawsuit also by Thailand, if I'm not mistaken, for pillaging their indigenous species and modifying them with the intention of returning them back to the country. They're under lawsuit. They're also under lawsuit. Well, actually, I don't believe it's a lawsuit, but I believe that Hungary has totally outlawed Monsanto products, and I think one other country in Europe has also outlawed Monsanto products. That's a pretty big deal.
Sure, because genetically changing the structure of something so important as a food source is going to create problems not just for animals and people, but through the entire planet. We have a system where one thing affects another. There are unintended consequences. And so what might look like a very brilliant, profitable idea for some executive,
Sure.
right? Wow, we could have a bumper crop and have a patent on something, just like corporations have been patenting the human gene, so that they'd be able to own different remedies. Right?
And in my personal opinion, genetics is at such an early stage that we don't know enough about it to be able to protect ourselves from the long term, and by long term I mean hundreds if not thousands of years of change, which we have to anticipate. If these crops are faulty just by our simple gene splicing, the ramifications will be felt for forever, basically.
That's correct.
And if for some reason the gene splicing that we've performed on these crops overrides the natural order, the natural evolution, we could lose some of these things. To say nothing of the insidiousness of such things as incorporating a resistance to a certain type of pesticide, so that only that pesticide works against the insects that are attacking that crop, that have consequently become impervious to the other types of pesticide.
Right.
That's just another example.
Right. So we're actually hoping that the message of the birds gets through to repurpose the military, repurpose corporations, so that there's a bioethical standard by which the corporation and the military and the government are held accountable to uphold as well. I was at a UN presentation. Sharon Hamilton Getz put on a wonderful presentation for the Spirituality Week at the United Nations recently. Oh, sweethearts, turn around. We want to see your handsome face. Thank you.
Come down.
And
Come on.
yeah, step up, honey.
Come on.
Okay.
They step up better for you than they do for
Yeah. Step up, sweetheart.
Yeah, we'll just sit there.
And there was a representative from, I believe, Burma, who talked about the happiness index. And there are lots of different ways of measuring a society, and the happiness index is one of the very important ways to take a look at the effectiveness of a corporation, right? How the stakeholders, and that means 360 degrees of the population, the environment, animals, nature, water, these are all very important, and that people are benefiting. So that there needs to be a deeper view, what the Native Americans used to say, the 7 generations view. I would say let's extend it further, since this is the 2012, the end of time. So we're experimenting now with time in a different way. We understand through Einstein's equation that time is just another function of matter. It's another expression. So that what we have done in the past affects the future, and what we do now affects the future in a very significant way, because our spirituality, our ethics, have got to keep in pace with our technology. This is a global community, and it's appropriate that everybody gets to benefit from the technologies and the opportunities we have for communication, for distribution, and there needs to be a rethinking of what is the intention of the purpose of a corporation, the purpose of military, the purpose of government. And it really needs to be for all the people, not necessarily just the people that are governed by a magic market territory, but how it impacts all these decisions have an amplifying effect. So the idea of people being governed by a conscious awareness that everybody needs to benefit as an overriding principle is really very important now more than ever, because the impact of future wars with weather alteration, with HARP technology, with the distortions of low-frequency electromagnetic waves from these cell towers 200 miles apart, the Gwen system throughout America. These are things that really people need to pay attention to and use their voice. I think in the Woodstock area we've been very involved. I know you had Kathy Nolan and Cameron Williams on the show recently about the fracking initiative that is being contemplated by the governor of New York State. And this is a really mobilizing force. I think many people have come together and forming small communities of activity that will get the message out that hydrofracturing is very dangerous. Our water supply and the impact of potential danger through radon emissions, through the chemical spills that can leak into the water, have impacts that go for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
That's interesting about the recent earthquake in Ohio. I saw one of the earlier news reports of the guy, the earthquake watcher, who was zeroing in on the area where that earthquake came from, sight unseen, and he realized that it was coming from a quarry that had been used for hydrofracking.
Right.
Now, I was born in the middle of the desert in Nevada on a Navy ammunition depot back in the 50s. And just to lay this groundwork for this little story, just earlier this year I noticed an earthquake. I have my smartphone with a little earthquake detector. And there was one right in the middle of Nevada, and I zoomed in on it, and it was right outside of Hawthorne in the middle of a huge quarry, an enormous quarry. Now that area is so desolate. I have no idea if that one was related to hydrofracking, but it was a sizable earthquake, more than 2 points. And it was enough to show up through my filter. Mm-hmm. So if this appears to be a pattern that should be, I think, explored, and I think that since people are suddenly becoming aware of this earthquake correlation in a real sense, not just an idea that it could happen, but the fact that it does seem to be happening, I think that is very important, and it will show some interesting things. The whole region of the southeastern United States, comprised of the New Madrid fault area, which St. Louis, Missouri, back in the 1800s, had a terrifically bad earthquake, and that evidently we're due for another one just out of the way those things go. The fact that there's fracking and other things could accelerate this. Mm-hmm. That the New Madrid site goes from Missouri all the way down practically to the Gulf of Mexico and all the way out to North Carolina. That's a tremor zone that many people know about. There are even tremor zones up here. We occasionally get the earthquakes up here.
Well, water is a human rights issue. Mm-hmm. And to potentially violate water and contaminate water on a premeditated basis where there is ample information, even by those advocates for hydrofracturing as a safe idea, there are acknowledgments that nothing is entirely safe. There has been nothing that's mm-hmm. accident-free, whether it's nuclear power, cars, airplanes.
Of course.
So it's a matter of time, and I share the concern that the birds have, which is protecting our children. Mm-hmm. We all know that at some point there's the opportunity for the same kind of arrogant action that happened with BP's oil spill, mm-hmm. where there were, by all reports, very seriously knowledgeable PhD practitioners who were advocating to the executive who said, go ahead and continue to drill, because they were late on their schedule and every day delay was costing a lot of money. Mm-hmm. They absolutely said it's not safe, and he said, I'll take my chances. And so you see things like the Valdez oil spill, you see things like the explosion, the Exxon explosion in India, Bhopal. There are accidents that happen just by virtue of its life. Mm-hmm. People will make decisions that they believe will give them a big bonus. There was an acknowledgement by Robert McNamara that one of the major reasons that the United States went into the Vietnam War was so that he would be a Secretary of State that had something very important to do, mm-hmm. and that it was really for his ego reasons. There's a lot of speculation in terms of reasons that this country went into war in the Middle East and Afghanistan and Iraq that have nothing to do with the safety and protection of the boundaries of the United States, but may very well have to do with personal idiosyncrasies, ideologies, mm-hmm. personal vendettas, the mission to either create an oil supply or whatever the reasons are that we could never know. But there is a lot of speculation about how accidents could happen, and that is when there's something in hydrofracturing where the shale formations can actually meander. Right? Once something is cracked, there are lots of fissures, and the chemicals and the radon could contaminate the water, despite all claims of the safety. So this is a very troubling issue. But my understanding, when I've done some soul searching, is that sometimes it takes a really horrific thing to happen to mobilize people. So the idea of hydrofracturing, even though it's been banned in countries like France, and I believe the UK is taking a look at banning it. There's a lot of information at the United Nations is against hydrofracturing, even though it's gone global, for things like you have suggested, the potential correlation of earthquakes that can travel and create tsunamis and other weather distortions. So this is it's not a safe practice. And the mission that the birds have is to talk to as many people as possible, to ignite their interest in writing a letter and getting involved, because it takes that kind of populace to really make a change. And I think that the global change that will happen, it's destined to happen, will be that the sand in somebody's shoe gets so irritating that they say enough is enough. And little grandma in Idaho, that's me, is going to say, even I will hold a sign or write to my congressperson or my president and take to the streets. And I think that's what the Occupy movement is about, and I think that it's ignited something very important, which is not just protest, but a solutions-based, participatory, consensus discussion of how to get all the parties to the table, how to have an active awareness that there are things that are unintended consequences, like the book Freakonomics talks about things that are consequences of an action that had absolutely nothing anticipated of the sort.
Sure.
And so we're talking about health for our children, we're talking about water contamination, we're talking about earthquakes, we're talking about major disruptions. So it's time for people to really take a look at, they need to get their hands in the mix and not just by proxy leave it to the experts, whether it's the scientists, whether it's the government officials, whether it's the religious leaders, and to be guided by their own consciousness, their own heart, their own ethics. The idea of, would you want this to happen to your family, should be guided as a principle for corporate decisions, for government decisions, so that there's not the elite that is protected from some of the worst case scenarios, and that other people are suffering the consequences. And I do believe that the birds are here as messengers, because we're called human beings, we're called human nature beings. And the nature part is often disconnected from the human being. So while we are being human, we need to be our best humankind, our awareness of the human and nature connection as stewards of this beautiful green and blue planet. And the cosmos, we have space-time fabric that if we're distorting things here, it does affect other beings. And it's got to be managed differently than it is. And I think this is a crisis point, and there's a juncture here where people are taking a look at what will they do. And instead of feeling powerless and overwhelmed by the potential enormity of this, I think that, as Pete Seeger has often said, we need to do what we can do, where we are, with what we have. And so the idea that if everybody just does something, the impact of that is enormous. I'm kind of reminded of a metaphor in the old, the fire, I don't want to call them firemen because they're firewomen too. but before the big hoses, people would pass
The bucket.
the bucket.
Yes.
Okay, the bucket brigade. So everybody participated and they put the fire out. And I think that's a very good metaphor because it takes all hands on deck. Everybody has some talent. Everybody has the ability to talk to their neighbor. Everybody has the ability to write a letter. And you don't have to be 18 and over. You don't have to be eligible to vote. The Birds have convinced lots of children to just draw a drop of water and write their name in crayon, and their parents are sending that to Governor Cuomo. So everybody needs to get involved. And I think that participation in community and the global community is going to ignite imagination and create much more green involvement. Catskill Mountain Keeper has a new initiative called the Carbon Neutral Initiative that Dylan is working on, and it will get people more aware of composting and putting solar panels up and things that the community can do and become a model community that radiates out and becomes a source of solutions and local solutions, so that the green movement can really overpower some of the plans that the governments all over the world have for creating enough energy, and the ways that they have at their disposal are simply not useful.
Right. So the Birds have co-opted with Pete Seeger on various occasions, haven't they?
They have. I will show you some of their activities. We frequently go to a Peace Corner in Wappingers Falls, which is at the intersection of Route 9 and 9D. And this is on Saturdays between noon and 2 o'clock. And there's lots of traffic that goes by, and Pete has frequently been there with his banjo, and we've got lots of activists that assemble. And the Birds are out there as well, and they stop a lot of traffic. And one of the things that the Birds enjoy doing, and Pete and everybody likes, is their peace routine. So Mr. Baby, this is his world peace meditation. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, may there be peace on Mother Earth, between all people, all animals, and all of nature, as we learn to live in harmony and balance. Om, on our one shared Mother Earth. Thank you. And this is called a headstand. It's a yoga posture that's been practiced by people around the world for thousands of years. And in this particular posture, the wisdom is that while maintaining your own body, you've got an awareness in an enlightened state that in order to solve the illusion of a problem, you need to seek the embedded wisdom by looking at it from another perspective. So in this example, Mr. Baby asks the question, is it possible to attain peace through war? It is not. You need to be peace to radiate peace. And what's your favorite aspect of life? There are archetypes of life that human beings have: love, loss, wonderment, and animals have the same emotions. So do the elements, and so does Mother Earth. It's expressed differently, sometimes over millennium. But one of the archetypes that Mr. Baby likes is laughing Buddha. So in making people laugh, he believes that's the best medicine. So in doing something silly, he's often able to get a good giggle out of children, and he knows that that's the best way to make interspecies friends and to convert lots of kids to the idea that there is a connection between animals and people that has an enduring effect on the psyches of our future leaders, our environmental leaders of today and tomorrow. And Miss Merlin, would you like to step up, pretty girl? And she's doing her bird ballet. In her bird ballet, by showing her beautiful wings, she is dancing the eternal dance of bird. Yes, you can do that too, I know. And thank you, Miss Girl. That's very beautiful. So Ms. Merlin is telling the story in that bird ballet of the great goddess Isis. Great goddess Isis, the ancient Egyptians tell us, was pure love. The great void of love, the pure potential. And she decided she wanted to express herself in a myriad of forms. So she coalesced into the form of bird, and she soared through the vastness and laid the cosmic egg. We call it quantum physics now. Mm-hmm. So when the egg hatched and all the waves of her love came out, they came out at different vibrational frequencies to form not just this universe and all things in the universe, but the multiverse of impossible ways of expressing love, things beyond our capability of imagination. And that beautiful dance of light, the choreography of love itself in expansion and contraction, is really the dance of the cosmos. And that is what Miss Merlin's beautiful dance is. And a little boy, would you like to step up? Would you like to step up? Step up, honey boy. Step up. Good boy.
Yeah, this is Peacenik.
Yeah, he's a little boy. He's only 3 years old.
Ooh, he had a birthday, did you?
Yes, he had a birthday. And little Peacenik has his own particular message. He's got a perpetual smile, it looks like.
He's smiling.
Yeah, he's a good smiler. A good smiler. Yeah. Well, Mr. Peacenik loves to fly. That's his favorite thing. And that's a nice thing as a bird, that he gets to do that. And he encourages everybody by his flying to spread their own wings and to soar with their imagination, because flying is fun. And his favorite idea in flying is that you can see things from a big perspective. It's a little like the NASA photograph that the astronauts took from space of the beautiful Earth. And when we were able to see Earth from a high perspective, and she looked so green and blue and beautiful, that there was a sense of awe and wonder that everything is connected. You don't see these divisions of somebody's a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or a this or a that or the other, or this is this country and that country and the other country. You see land and water and everything is connected, and that's the way Mr. Peacenik sees everything. Not as divided, but as connected and beautiful.
You can't see political boundaries when you're flying.
No, and it makes no sense to birds. So they are indigenous. They were all born here, of course, but the species is indigenous to the Amazon rainforest basin. And what I tell children is that their real names are not macaws. Their real names are arara, because the indigenous people in the Amazon rainforest listen to the birds and listen to their vocalization. And when the birds are flying or they're at rest, they go almost like a cat purr. And it sounds like arara. So that's the authentic name of these birds. And of course, in Spanish, it's papagayo, guacamaya. But the Portuguese name, taken from the indigenous natives of the Amazon rainforest basin, is arara. So that's their authentic name. And when children ask, can you say something? I ask the children if they can say hello in arara, so that they can learn how to speak parrot. And hopefully their message will reach many, many people. I know that their feathers are in every country. They participate in lots of events. One of them is in commemoration of the International Day of Peace on September 21st, initiated by the United Nations. And many performers have gone around the world with their feathers. They have participated very, very nearby at Menla with a Rinpoche doing a water blessing, and he took their feather to India. And they have lots of feathers in wonderful places from the events that they've been to. And they, of course, go to Echo Fest in the city every year. They participate in an event that they helped to co-create in Woodstock. It's been 3 years now, the annual Walk for Peace on the anniversary weekend of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, with the idea never again, so that there is a consciousness of ending all nuclear war devices because it is so horrific. And here again, with such a horrible event as Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the United Nations got created as a remedy to one nation doing something that would be so horrific to another, in the perhaps unaware naivete that this would be a way of ending the war more quickly, favoring one nation. But the consequences are just too horrific to imagine. So never again is a preamble to things like fracking. We have enough information about the consequences that could be unintended that we need to be aware in advance of what not to do. And so this is what the birds are really talking about, the interconnection of all things and the sacredness of life. And if they could help to shift one person at a time to a new worldview, that there is a sacred reverence for all life, we will not any longer see that the earth is to be exploited for her minerals, for using her water in ways that are used as toxic dumping grounds.
I would like to make mention that I actually own a couple of birds that are good friends with these birds. I own 2 cockatoos.
They own you, David.
Yes, well, we're all members of the same flock.
That's correct.
And Babyhead Willie and Sweetie Pooh Bunny Hop are umbrella cockatoos. They could be found at my store, the White Griffin. If you come in, I'll give you a free feather.
And they are beautiful dancers.
They love dancing. That's one thing about birds, and maybe a couple of other species they've recently found, is that these species are the only animals so far that they've discovered that are able to carry a human beat. When I got my birds, they had their own strange tattoo that they would do with their feet. But then when I taught them the 4/4 time and the 2/4 time, in that whole paradigm, they love it so much. They love the Beatles. They love anything with a beat. And sometimes they'll just be sitting there, and I'll hear Baby or Sweetie start to sing along with the tune.
That's very
in their own special way.
That's right.
Yeah, in Australia, there's a species of cockatoo called the palm cockatoo. It's a very strange-looking, more black type of cockatoo with an oddly shaped beak. And that is the great ancient mother cockatoo that all the other cockatoo species have come from. And if you Google it on YouTube, you can find the nature episode, the Parrots of Oz, where they are studying the palm cockatoos. And the scientists go up into the trees and look at the cockatoos, and the cockatoos say, "Hello." So my question is, did we teach them that? Or did they teach us that?
I think
They're all together. I think it goes both ways.
It's a little like the lotus, right? It blooms and it seeds at the same time.
Yeah.
It's the perennial question: who came first, the chicken or the egg? And I believe they both were produced simultaneously.
It's an example of another thing that spreads outwards from us and how it affects the other animals and how they can affect us. We've only got a couple of minutes left, I think, so I'm going to step back to the board. Maybe you could talk, while I do that, maybe you could just talk a little bit more about these birds and maybe something about them, their personalities.
Miss Merlin is a very introverted girl. She's reserved and leaves the boys to do their more gregarious, outgoing activities. Mr. Baby over here is very, very generous with his ability to ask people to pet him. He loves to be touched, and he enjoys doing physical tricks. And this little guy over here, their child, 3-year-old little peacenik, is just the sweetest boy I could imagine. It was the treasure of my life to see that when they came back from singing one time with Pete, she wouldn't get out of her little carry case, and the next morning she had an egg. And 30 days later, I heard peep out of the little case, and here was little Peacenik, who was about this big. He looked like a piece of bazooka chewing gum, all pink and just the smallest little character. So Mom and Dad were wonderful parents. They fed him constantly. She kept him under her wing, and Mr. Baby was the vigilant father, very beautiful protector of his flock, and he fed his wife, and he gave her lots of affection as she took care of the baby. And they preened him morning and evening. It's just a relentless taking care of their little one. So he's probably going to be looking for a wife at some point, and the flock will continue. Now, one of the ambitions that I have, since the birds are so long-lived, they are predicted to live about 120 years. And they have such a rich opportunity to influence people for generations upon generations that I am here in the Woodstock area now from New York City to create a peace parrot sanctuary. It will be an environmental education center where people can come and visit with the Parrots for Peace, get their photographs taken if they so desire, buy some books that will be a combination of photographs and stories about their true life adventures, the different things that they've done, singing with the Rivertown kids that sing environmental songs with Pete Seeger, and lots of wonderful adventures that they've had that they'd love to share with everybody, sailing on the Clearwater, and all the environmental education that can happen through the first-hand experience of seeing birds such as Baby Merlin and Peacenik, with a first-hand opportunity to touch them, hold them, get a sense of what their eyes look like, and understand the incredible intelligence. These macaws is considered to be about equivalent to an 8-year-old child. And as far as I'm concerned, any 8-year-old child is far more intelligent than I am. But they've got a sense of humor, they have their own language. I talked to the gentleman who was given a parrot years and years ago by his grandmother, and instead of trying to teach the parrot human language, Michael Schwartz was actually listening to his parrot, who was a mature parrot when he got the parrot, and he identified some correlations between the vocalization that the parrot made and activities such as wanting to go to sleep or eat or different functions. And when he got his PhD, he studied the vocalizations and language of the Amazon parrots, that his little parrot had been a representative of that group, and he identified that parrots have as rich a language as human beings do. They have accents and dialects, they have well-known voices, so that there's a James Earl Jones kind of voice, or celebrity voices that are easily recognizable. And unless the parrots have actually grown up in their own culture, they wouldn't necessarily know that language. So there's a lot that we need to learn about our brothers and sisters on our planet.
We're going to have to conclude tonight, I'm afraid. So I'm going to play our outro now.
Beautiful.
And thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity to meet everybody, David.